Good evening, everyone, and welcome again to our fourth part in the educational series. My name is Aisha Sardar, and I'm the founder of Public Allies. And Public Allies is a nonprofit established to promote healthy and vibrant living. Our main objective is to help and support the most vulnerable members of the society to overcome their challenges. Today, we have with us again our experts who have been so generous and kind to spend their time and give us education about the different things that all of us need from their legal aspect, from their financial aspect, and from the aspect. So please welcome with me Andrea Vladescu, who's an accountant, Neeru Padmanabhan, who's a financial services expert, Jana Sang, who is a lawyer and practices family law, wills and estate, and Shailene Kim, who's a director at the Everest Funeral Concierge. Welcome, ladies, and thank you so much for doing this. And Jana, I hand it over to you.
Should unmute myself. Thanks very much, Aisha. And thank you very much to Public Allies for hosting our webinar series. And I'm a little bit sad that this is our last one, but also very excited. We have a very packed agenda to go through today. So Neeru, if you can pull up our presentation and we can get started right away. And so as we are getting the presentation up and running, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I am a lawyer, as Aisha mentioned. I've been in practice for 11 years, and my primary practice areas are family law and wills and estates. All right, Neeru, next slide. Great. All right, and again, this is to let you guys know that this webinar series, we are providing general information and we're not here to give any professional or legal advice. So if there's something that comes up during the course of the presentation that you have questions about for your own personal circumstance, please don't hesitate to reach out to any one of us or to reach out to a professional that can help you get some answers. All right, so to get started, you see three people here on the screen, and for those of you that don't know, I'm sure most of you know who these people are, but we on the top left corner we have Prince, top right corner we have Bob Marley, and the bottom right corner we have Amy Winehouse. So what do you think these people have in common, aside from the fact that they are musical legends? So unfortunately, all three of these musical legends passed away without a will. And so what has happened to their estates? For Bob Marley, his estate was in court in litigation for over 30 years since his death, because all of the people that he's left behind were fighting over money, and in particular fighting over the rights to use his likeness, which is, in turn turns into a lot of dollars. For Prince, he passed away pretty recently in 2016. It's approximately a $200 million estate. And because he died without a will, there were all kinds of people coming out of the woodwork claiming that, they are his child, they are a wife that nobody knew about, sibling, distant relatives. And as far as I know, his litigation is still in court and it's ongoing. With Amy Winehouse, her estate was just under $5 million. And because she died without a will, her estate went to her parents, and her dad acted as her executor for her estate, despite the fact that she had a publicly very contentious and rocky relationship with him. And we will never know whether she wanted her parents to actually receive all of the money from her estate. Next slide. Okay, so what are we talking about today? We're talking about wills and estate planning. So what is a will? It's a legal document that comes into effect after someone has passed away. In this document, it allows you to name whoever you want as the executor, and this is the person who has to take control of your assets, pay off your debts, file your income taxes, and then with the remaining assets of the estate, then pay it out to your named beneficiaries. The second aspect that the will provides is for you to name and structure your beneficiaries however way and whichever way you want. Last but not least, for people with children that are under the age of 18, very important to have wills because it allows them to name guardians for their children if both parents were to pass away. Next slide. Okay, so what happens to your assets if you die without a will? And this is only pertaining to Ontario. If you're coming from different provinces, they may have different legislation that specifies a different order. But this is generally how it would happen. If you are married and not in a common law relationship, so legally married, the first $200,000 of your estate goes to your married spouse. And if there's only $200,000 of the estate, then everything goes to the married spouse. And then even if there are other beneficiaries that might be entitled to something, doesn't matter, they lose out. So in a scenario where there are no children, but there is a living married spouse, then everything the remaining assets of the estate also goes to the married spouse. However, if there are children of the marriage, and depending on how many children there are in the marriage, then if we look at sub 1 and sub 2 there, that specifies how the remaining assets are apportioned to the living spouse and living children and or grandchildren. Now, if it's a situation where your married spouse doesn't survive you and there are no children or grandchildren from you, then it then goes down the line this way. So first, if you have any living parents, it goes to your parents. If there are no parents, then it goes to your siblings. If there are no siblings, then it goes to your nieces and nephews. And then if there are no nieces and nephews, then it goes to your next of kin. And that's determined by blood relation. And then if there's no next of kin, or if there's no one coming forward to claim that they are blood relation to you, then the estate becomes property of the government, which nobody wants. And so given that this is how the government will dole out your assets if you do pass without a will, who gets left out in the cold? So you've noticed probably that at the start of this slide when I've made a lot of emphasis on married spouse. And that's because common law spouses are not within the definition of the Succession Law Reform Act as a spouse. And that means they don't have any automatic entitlements. So even though, two people have been in a common law relationship, for 30 years, they're true in the sense of being in a relationship just as much as a married couple, but without that legal marriage, they would have to sue the estate to get some sort of entitlement. And that's additional costs and additional headaches. Who also gets left out in the cold are potentially elderly parents that are potentially dependent on the person who's passed away. Also potentially adult children with disability who may have more of a financial dependency on the parent who has passed away. Next slide, please. Okay, and so some issues for people to think about for people that, passed without a will. So some concerns would be that, this can potentially cause your family to fight over who will be the executor, so who will be in control of your estate, and also who will be the guardian for your minor aged children, because you don't have a will that specifies who your chosen guardians are. Also, if you want to leave a specific gift to a particular person, so for example, like a family heirloom that only passes down the family line in a certain way, then that won't happen unless your family members will honor that in amongst themselves. But if there's a fight, then there's going to be a challenge and exponential legal costs associated with that. Also, if it's a situation where you have separated from your married spouse, you're in the process of negotiating, what the separation and the property and all of that looks like, and your divorce has not yet been finalized, if you do pass away in this intervening time without updating your will or without having a will in place, your married spouse is still considered a spouse within the meaning of the legislation, and that means that they will inherit your assets. Last but not least, this is close and dear to my heart because I have 2 dogs and those are my guys there. Do you want your pets to be cared for by a specific person? I have in my will that, my sister for sure will be getting my dogs, and I have backup custodians for my dogs as well, because I don't want them to end up in a shelter. And so having a will also allows you to apportion any funds that you may want for their expenses and care. Next slide. Okay, so to sum up some of the benefits of the will, a lot of this I've already talked about. So first, you get to choose your executor. So you get to name an executor that you trust will do what's best for you and for your beneficiaries and for your estate, and to deal with things in a reasonable and in goodwill. Next, you get to structure your beneficiaries. You get to specifically exclude people if you like, because if you have an estranged family member, let's say that's a sibling, then and you don't want anything to go to them, then that's where having a will is very important. Guardians, I've just talked about. Funeral arrangements as well. We can specify this in your will for your family members to honor. As well with business and corporation arrangements. This goes into the estate planning piece, which Andrea and Niru and we'll talk a little bit more about. But if you own a private corporation for your business and it's intended to be a family business, there's lots of different ways that we can work with that to minimize the probate taxes that are payable on death. So estate, that goes into my next point, which is estate planning, because there's nothing guaranteed in life except for death and taxes. And so when you die, you have to pay the government taxes. So what we can do in terms of pre-planning is to take a look at your assets and to minimize the taxes that we would have to pay. So currently probate tax in Ontario is 1.5% for all estates over $50,000. Last but not least, having a will avoids a lengthy estate administration process for the people that you leave behind and helps to avoid any potential litigation that may come up. Next slide. Okay, so to sum up, these are sort of the major groups of people that should definitely have a will in place. So parents with minor aged children, because they need guardians named in place. People in common law relationships, to make sure that your common law spouse gets the entitlement that you would want them to have from your assets. If someone's experiencing a change in marital status, so if they're getting married, if they're separated, if they're getting divorced, these have the potential of nullifying existing wills. So definitely a situation where someone needs to look at their situation. If some people have existing prenuptial agreements, marriage contracts, or family business, very important from an asset protection standpoint. If you've been estranged from some family members, again, from an asset protection standpoint, very important to have a will. If you have no relatives whatsoever here, and let's say you want to gift money to a charity if something were to happen to you, then this allows for that to happen. Okay, and that wraps up my section. I'll now pass it on to Andrea to talk about the tax considerations.
Thank you very much, Jaina. I'd like to thank everybody for coming to my webinar, guests, and also the experts from our panel. I enjoyed the journey of the last 3 webinars together, and today is the 4th webinar. It was a great journey, and yeah, thank you very much for that. I would like to introduce myself in few words. My name is Andrea Vladescu. I'm an accountant. What I'm doing, I help small businesses and individuals to manage their financial health and growth by offering accounting and tax planning and preparation services. Before I start my practice, I worked for more than 20 years as an accountant. I was involved in preparing financial reporting, cash flow management, internal controls to both profit and not-for-profit organization, assisting with accounting software implementation as well. Currently, I help individuals and small businesses to capture all allowable deduction in order to minimize their tax payments and help them stay on top of everything, all the updates regarding personal and corporate tax return. I help small businesses understand better their company current situation by providing a detailed analysis of key performance indicators. This aspect is very often missed by small business owners and is very important for their business as well. I also prepare financial statements, offer payroll services and bookkeeping services for the clients that prefer to come to the entire package to my practice. So this is about me, and Niru, please, the next slide. As Jenna mentioned before, and to quote Benjamin Franklin as well, nothing is certain but death and taxes. Next slide. You cannot escape taxes, but you can lower your taxes with a proper estate plan that will protect your family and your own wealth today and in the years to come. The main liabilities on an estate are income tax, probate, and estate settlement. Property or investments, just to talk a little bit about the tax, to start first with the most painful aspect. Property or investments are your assets. Canada Revenue Agency do not tax on assets. Canada Revenue Agency tax on the income. However, at death, you will be considered to have sold all your assets at fair market value just before you died. And in that moment, CRA will tax your income at that time. When the spouse dies and the assets are passed to the other heirs, 50% of the capital gains of any stocks, real estate investment, bonds, and other assets are taxable at the personal income tax rate. Each year, people spend lots of money on attorney and court fee associated with probate fees when one of the family members dies. With or without a will, the property must go through a probate proceedings. Every province has their own probate fee. Ontario has the highest fee, which is 1.5%. So just prepare for that and try to avoid, because good news is that there are strategies to avoid probate. And the next slide, please, Nero. So there is no certain order of these strategies. I just want to list them, but not necessarily in this order. You have to, to follow. It depends what applies to your situation, your business. So one of the way to avoid will is creating a trust that allows you to transfer assets while you are still alive, which avoid probate costs when you die. What is a trust? A trust is a legal entity that owns some or all of your assets, such as bank accounts, real estate, stocks, bonds, mutual fund, and even private businesses. The trust instructs the trustee on how to distribute your assets to beneficiary while you are alive or after your death, or if you become incapable of doing so. So it's important to talk to a lawyer and an accountant, because setting up a trust and in proper way, you have to have these two professionals together to help you out. Another way to avoid probate is purchase a permanent life insurance policy. This financial instrument is often used as part of the estate planning to build wealth and cover estate taxes. Most amounts received from a life insurance policy following someone's death are tax-free. Make sure that you choose wisely the beneficiary on your policy. And permanent life insurance policy, it's an opportunity to leave legacy or pay taxes. So your heirs don't have to go to this burden when you die. Another way to avoid probate, it's set up transfer on that account. This allows you to name one or more beneficiary of the account to avoid the probate process. It's simple to create and usually it's free, and the beneficiary can easily claim the money after the owners of the account dies. However, it requires some extra paperwork and time, so you'll need to be persistent and ask your institution, financial institution, for the required forms, like your bank for bank accounts, loans, whatever you want to, to pass it to the beneficiary after your death. Another way to avoid probate is through creating the registered retirement savings plan or registered retirement income fund, known as RIF, or tax-free savings account. But make sure that you have the beneficiary set up in those plans, and the beneficiary are up to date. If any changes happen in your family and the beneficiary cannot longer accept this, or you don't want to live to them anymore, you have to change it. For example, you separate, you go through separation divorce process. Don't forget about your plans, RRSP, RIF, and TFSA, and change the beneficiary to the person that you would like to get your money to leave the money to. How else to avoid probate? Use joint ownership. You may have vehicle, homes, bank accounts in joint ownership. The title of the asset automatically passes to the joint survivor upon your death, so they don't have to go to a hassle to get possession of your assets. Last but not least, giving cash gifts while you are still alive. This may reduce the overall tax burden on your estate when you die. Gifting money, it's a good way to help out your kids while you are still alive, and you know what, you can watch them enjoy it, so you will see the benefit of your kindness. I can mention, even though I didn't write it on my slide, right now it's coming to my mind, another way to minimize taxes is to donate your stock portfolio in kind to charitable organization, if you like doing this. And when you donate publicly trade securities, you won't have to claim any capital gains that may have accumulated over the years. So your estate will also get a charitable donation credit that can be used to further reduce the tax you owe. And just to wrap up, as always, professional help is highly recommended. Meet with an estate lawyer, an accountant, to develop an effective plan that will help you. Now, during this time when COVID hit, we saw, all of us, we saw from March to June, especially, kind of reduction in the value of the assets. And that was the good time to do this estate planning. When you revalue your assets, and in order to protect your assets, to protect your family and your business as well. So don't hesitate, talk to a professional and ask for this advice. This time it's still good to do this estate planning. And I would like to pass it now to narrow, so she will get more financial insights about our topic today. You are muted.
Yes, sorry. Sorry, everybody, I was muted. My name is Niru Padmanabhan. I'm a financial professional. I have been a financial professional for about 1.5 years. Prior to that, I was actually in social services, and I just kept on seeing regular people end up in shelters and bad situations. And a lot of it was because of lack of estate planning. I would have little old ladies in babushkas end up on my caseload at the shelter. Not every family is designed alike, and that's what a lot of people don't keep in mind. A lot of people think that people are going to come up and take care of their family and make sure that everybody's going to be well taken care of, but that doesn't always happen. I would have a family member stay with somebody for about a month or two and then get dropped off at the shelter after, and it was offsetting, and I just realized it was really due to lack of financial knowledge, lack of financial planning, lack of access to good products, that really made a lot of people end up in bad situations. So this is why we started this financial series. This is why we had the ability to get together such amazing people like Andrea, Jaina, and Aisha hosted us on our platform, and Shailene has also joined us too in this. So thank you very, very much for allowing us to do this. This is part 4. I'm really sad that it's ending. But thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you for letting us share our knowledge and share our experience. And okay, sorry. So in previous sessions, I've discussed a lot about the 6 keys to a financial plan. And I'm really going to compare it to will planning. So when we're looking at 6 keys of financial plan, we analyze cash flow. We look at what money is coming in, what money is going out, and what are the pluses and minuses in all that. We look at managing your debt, looking at an emergency fund, looking at proper protection, building wealth, and preserving wealth. Those all key parts of a plan. But in between there starts the will planning process. It starts the estate planning process. So it's not a process that you start later on in life that a lot of people think about, or you start right when you get married. It begins right when you're able to pay taxes, because at that time, that's where you get government tax. That's where you'll face probate. So younger you are, better it is to get a will to start that estate planning process. And as soon as you start your financial cash flow sheet and you start to get money into your home, your life, the estate planning process starts right there. But when you're looking at it, and as you age, as you get older, the will planning process includes insurance planning, tax planning, debt management, investment and wealth restructuring or structuring, and funeral cost planning. A lot of people don't really realize that a funerals cost. And they don't really realize that their debt plays a part into everything as well. So even when they pass away, they'll have to pay their taxes, which everybody already talked about. So the first thing I really want to talk about is insurance. So I know that Andrea already covered a lot about insurance, but I really want to talk about why we would use insurances and why insurance planning is so important. First, it's there to pay off any debt and replace income. So again, I mentioned I was working in shelters. I worked in low-income programming. I found a lot of clients ending up there. A lot of young families would end up there due to this problem. Family member died, especially if a family member dies young, they leave behind a lot of debt, and there's no way to replace your income. So making sure that there's some insurance planning done at any level. And it's just a peace of mind. If something ever does happen, I know I'm covered. I know my husband is covered for anything that happens. I know I've left a little bit to my family, my parents, in case anything happens. So it's the same for everybody. And you get the ability to pass that legacy on to a family member or charity. And your insurance planning allows you to have different beneficiaries that you designate on your will. And it's all tax-free money, right? Especially if insurance planning is personal. When we get into insurance planning that goes for corporations or businesses, it might look a little bit different. So insurance planning is so key on every level. And the best part is it bypasses that probate process. So that taxation process is completely passed. So it's so important to insurance plan, so you know that you have that money set aside for your family. And when we look at insurance planning, a lot of people don't understand there's two choices there, two major choices. Like there's one called term and there's one permanent. So term is cheaper because it's like renting, and permanent is like owning, so it's a little bit higher cost. So the difference between the two are key. The term insurance is lower upfront, but it gets higher as the term falls off as you get older and older, and potentially nothing at the end. So if I get insurance for 20 years, at 20 years, I'll pay for the insurance and it falls off, just like renting. And a lot of people, this is what happens. Their term insurance falls off before they pass away. So sometimes in their late 50s, 60s, insurance stops, and they pass away when they're 75, 80 years old. And sometimes there's still costs. A lot of people don't realize that now mortgages go 30 years. And if life happens, a lot of people take equity out of their home. So what essentially ends up happening is lots of debt. So in that sense, permanent insurance, there's a higher cost upfront, but because it's like owning, because the insurance has an investment component to it, and the investment grows tax-free, and you can access it within your lifetime or pass it on as a legacy. And it goes till your entire lifetime, till you pass away. And you don't pay for your entire life if it's set up appropriately. You will pay until, example, 65. You can pay it off when you're 50. It has lots more benefits to it, as Andrea mentioned. So when we look at debt management, investing, and where your money actually goes, a lot of people feel that the estate planning process, the will planning process starts near the end of your life. Actually, it starts at the very beginning. As soon as you start investing, as soon as you start saving, as soon as you start getting into that world, that's when your money starts working for you. So it's a good idea to set yourself up in the beginning. So again, only thing we know that are guaranteed is death and taxes. So we don't know when this can happen. So when we are looking at a lot of people, they put their money in places where it gets locked in. So GICs, guaranteed income certificates, this is a way to invest in Canada, 1 out of 4 major ways to invest. So GICs are low return, low risk, and they grow below inflation. So they actually grow below the rate at which cost rises. And they get locked in. So if you have something happen with your family, that you can break it then, but say something goes wrong, somebody gets sick, it gets locked in, and sometimes it's non-redeemable. So bonds are another way of investing in Canada. That's when you have ownership in a growth of a company. They're medium risk and medium return. Stocks are high risk for high potential return, but it's harder to diversify. And investment funds are actually great sometimes because they get managed by a professional money manager. There's diversity, and there's something called downside protection. And the reason I talk about the way you invest is because all of these products get taxed differently depending on how you take them out. So when you're looking at certain types of funds, or you're looking at certain types of investments, some of them pass probate and some of them don't. So examples are exchange traded funds. I know I put EFTs, but they're exchange traded funds, mutual funds, and segregated funds. So when we look at it, when we compare ETFs, mutual funds, and segregated funds actually pass that probate process. So when we look at mutual funds, they're actually not even creditor protected. So say, for example, something goes wrong in a household and, there's creditors coming after the family. Then they can go after all the investments that family wants to put to their estate, they want to leave to their family. And it's transfer fees, redemption fees, professional fees. So all of those costs are in there, and mutual funds and ETFs do not pass the probate process. So they have to go through that provincial taxation process that increases the amount of time it takes for those funds, those investments to get to your family. So that's where segregated funds are more of a benefit long term because they're creditor protected. There's guarantees on that principal amount. So if you invest $10,000, you're able to guarantee that $10,000 principal amount will be there. There's no fees on transfers, redemptions, and they might be higher fees just slightly, but they have more benefits and they pass that probate process and there's guarantees when you get to death. So some products are just better than others. So we want to try to get in positions and get in products that have less tax implications that can pass that probate process. So even while you're investing, even while you're really young, you can put yourself in a position where if something does go wrong, you're in a better position because that money just goes to your family right away. And I know Andrea's already covered a lot about tax implications, but I'm just going to cover that GIC, bonds, investment funds are the types of things that go into your investment boxes in Canada. So registered education savings plans that you might be saving for your children. If you put a segregated fund versus a mutual fund, and it's fully taxed when it's coming out, but it passes all those processes, those estate processes, that probate process, registered retirement savings plans, non-registered TFSAs, and permanent insurance. So we want to try to put our money in places where there's less tax implications and they're already passing a probate process. So if I have a segregated fund inside of my TFSA and my permanent insurance, everything passes probate anyways. But if I have a segregated fund inside of my TFSA versus a mutual fund, it's going to pass that probate process. There's going to be no tax on it, and it's going to go directly to my heirs, directly to the people that I have on my will, versus other things. So if I have mutual funds in my registered retirement savings plans, it'll go through that probate process, that taxation, the regular taxation processes that it has to go through, the fee process, the admin fee process there. So if we have it in something like a segregated fund, it passes it and it goes directly to your heirs. So that's just the difference there. So I just really quickly want to go over, sorry, I went over this a little bit too fast, sorry. RSP, so say for example, I have $1 million in investment. So a lot of people don't even understand how much money they need to retire with. They don't realize that how far will their money take them. So say for example, I have $1 million put into an account for myself, it's vesting, and say for example, inflation is 2% and my investments are growing at an average 8%, but every year I want to take out $100,000. So with tax, basically I'm going to have to take out $142,000 to get out $100,000. So that money is only going to last me 9 years. So if I have my money in open investments, which is half tax, and I want to get $100,000 out per year because that's my lifestyle, those are my choices, I need to take out $121,000, and that money will last me 11 years. But if I'm in TFSAs and there's no tax implications, if I withdraw $100,000, it is $100,000, and that amount will last me 15 years. But with permanent insurance, talking about all the benefits that Andrea spoke about, there's a tax shelter portion in there. And because you borrow against it as collateral, it continues to grow because the amount never gets attacked in the insurance. So that's where permanent insurance is, it grows for you even while you're borrowing against it. So that's why it has a lot more benefits in that estate planning process. And I also urge everybody to try to understand how much they actually need for retirement. So those are types of projections that financial professionals like myself give you. So do you know how to retire with the lifestyle that you want? So when we look at it, we recap the tips. We just look at making sure that you're in the right positions. You have your money in the right places. You have all your beneficiary designations, and you're trying to put yourself in the right products that will help your family with your peace of mind, like that insurance planning piece. And you have your tax planning all done. You know what products are going to pass probate, what products are going to be non-taxable, and you have your estate planning pieces done ahead of time. So that will process is so, so necessary. And I can't emphasize it enough. I've seen quite a bit of stuff happen. I could have just done this whole webinar based on examples of what I've seen in social services, especially with children, families that have children that die without wills and don't leave anybody any money to raise their children. It's happened quite a few times. Where do those children end up? They end up in foster care because the individuals that the parents, you know, nobody comes forth to raise those children because there's no money left behind. Especially happens a lot in lower income families. So keep in mind, not every family is designed alike, and cost of living is very high now. So always make sure that you have some money left aside for your children. There's some type of protection that you have, and even making sure that your ability to earn is protected, so it doesn't come out of your estate. So if you've ever seen people who say, oh, I'm saving my legacy for my children, and they don't really spend in their old age, that's where that's where your investments come in, and that's where your insurance planning comes in. So permanent insurances help you save that money so you can leave that legacy and spend what you need to spend in your lifetime and enjoy your lifetime. So I'll give it off to Shailene Kim. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Hi, everybody. My name is Shailene Kim, and I am the Senior Managing Director for Everest Funeral Concierge. And just looking at that, it's probably a topic that nobody really wants to talk about. And I think, you know, Jaina, Andrea, and Naru talked about a lot of really good stuff, you know, estate management, having a will, making sure you have the right type of insurance products in place. And this is being proactive and having that financial plan and financial home in order. But the one thing that maybe we forget is that last piece. Like, we do all of this for our family, you know, we do all of this to make sure that, you know, they are going to be set up if or when we do pass away. So what I want to talk about is just a couple of things that might go over our head, but the planning aspect of those final arrangements. So on the next slide, I just want to show you that, yes, you can have the will. I think it's a great starting point for estate management, which Jaina talked about, but there's other things. What about when someone does pass away, that insurance comes into play? Those taxes we talked about with Andrea, we have to figure that out with the accountant, but there's that funeral aspect. You know, when someone passes away in Canada, by law, they do have to either be buried or cremated. So that is a very, very big choice. And so I'm going to highlight the concierge service that you can, you know, maybe get from a funeral home, and you can also get with Everest as well. So we'll just click to the next slide. And so concierge service, it's the same idea as a travel agent. You know, there's so many different funeral homes out there, so many different locations. Which one do I go to in a period of time that has, you know, someone's passed away just so quickly? It's very unexpected. So there's a lot of planning that's involved. There's a lot of negotiation in terms of cost, because, you know what, the average funeral, there's a really big range. It could be as low as $5,000, or it could be as much as $40,000. It really depends on what the family is looking for. So a lot of families just feel very lost. They don't know where to go. They don't know where to start. And so the pricing is a big issue, and also implementing everything that they actually want to do. So there are services out there, you know, around the world, any country, and there's also translation services to help families in this most difficult time of need. So if we can go to the next slide, I'll show you a couple decisions. So when a loved one passes away, the family is asked to make at least 100 decisions within the first 2 days. And I've just listed a couple things here, but this is reality, right? We're going to ask, do they want to be buried or cremated? You know, what is the budget? You know, is there an emergency fund? Was there life insurance that they had that they can use to pay for something like this? And, you know, who's invited? Where are we going to do this? Visitations, etc. So the list can go on, and it's just a matter, you know, do we have that emotional and mental capacity to even make these decisions really quickly? Maybe, maybe not. So on the next slide, I would just show you kind of how Everest works. And again, there, you can also Google funeral concierge services, see what's out there. But with Everest, it all starts with a phone call. Like, when someone's gone, who do I call? I don't know what to do. You can call Everest 24/7. And what we do is we discuss wishes, just like any other funeral director out there. And, you know, what is the budget? How much do you have to spend? Do they want to be brought back to their home country? And then we will actually do all of the legwork, that administrative stuff that a lot of people don't want to do, right? We will shop around for different funeral homes, different pricing, what you're looking for. We are the experts, so we can absolutely do it. And then number 4 is arrange those, that plan that's created. So this timeline is what families go through, but it may take a much longer period of time. You know, it could take a couple of days, a couple of weeks, just depending, you know, how affected they are by the loss of the loved one. So I'm going to give you an example on the next slide, just a case study of what families can actually go through if they don't have the resources available. So do you mind just clicking to the next? Oh, awesome. Okay, so what usually happens is when somebody passes away, what we do is we'll probably Google, you know, funeral home near me, or get a, you know, someone else, like a family member referring another funeral home. So we just call, they give us a price. So this is a real family. They got a quote for about a little bit over $10,000. Okay, the service, the casket, the full shebang for it. And so they asked us for some help. And so what we're able to do is we're able to negotiate that same type of service down to about $7,000. But during that time period, we asked, you know what, let's shop around. Let's see what else we can do. And within a couple hours, we're able to find another funeral home, the same type of service, very similar type of casket, for about $4,500. So, you know, by taking that time, letting us do what we do best, we're able to save the family, you know, actual savings of over $6,000. And that amount of money can be used going back to the family, you know, if they have children, if there are taxes that need to be paid, probate fees, etc. So, you know, this is I really love to share this because you'll be amazed at how much you can actually save for these type of services, just getting that help, etc. So there's a lot of other tools that are available to you. You just kind of have to know where to go. So the next slide is just a snapshot of, you know, there are databases out there that can provide you pricing for different funeral homes. Instead of you calling to different ones, you can do that by just putting in a postal code. It's readily available for you. And then on the next slide, there's other way you can plan ahead of time. You know, they have prearranged services. There's tools online where you can kind of do a questionnaire and plan everything out if you're very meticulous in that way. And the last thing I wanted to share is probably the most important and realistic on the next slide, is just making sure all of your information is stored in a safe place. Okay, so sorry, just the next slide there. Okay, awesome. So what Naru talked about, what Andrea talked about, what Jaina talked about, getting that will, getting the insurances, getting, you know, making sure all of your assets and all that paperwork admin stuff is covered. We have to make sure that everything is stored somewhere, because someone passes away, we can help plan everything. Okay, I have the will, I've got everything set up, but if the family doesn't know where to actually retrieve that information, it's going to take a very, very long time. So, you know, what company is this insurance policy with? You know, who is your accountant? Because I need to, you know, do the taxes for it. What's something simple like the SIN number, right? So these are realistic things that we should be doing right now, getting our financial home in order. And I think the whole message with everyone speaking was really just kind of be proactive and see what's missing right now, and maybe, you know, we can kind of help you with that solution. But with Everest, one of our highlights is the concierge services, but there's a lot of other tools that we like to share with our clients about, and one of them is definitely storing all of your personal information. So that's all I wanted to share in a very simple, easy to understand way. So I'm going to pass it back to the host, and I'll let you guys finish off. So thanks so much for the time.
Thank you so much, ladies. Any questions? Anyone? Please unmute yourself if you have any questions. Okay, I have a, okay, go on, Carrie Ann.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify the amount to which probate is enforced. I do work in the legal field and family law as well, not counsel. So, but I was under the impression that preparation is still needed. But I just wanted to clarify: is that 1.5% applied when the estate is over 50K, or is that is it applied? Is there a threshold in which the probate fee is not applied? Is my general question.
Hi, Carrie Ann, it's Jana here. Thanks very much for your question. So you are right in the sense that there is no probate tax on estates that are less than $50,000. So for estates that are over $50,000, there's no tax on the first $50,000, but then subsequent to that, then that's when the 1.5% applies. Does that answer your question?
Yes, perfectly. No, I just wanted to make sure. I know that stuff adds up a lot, and so it's really important. And thank you guys so much for this information. It's so helpful and brings a lot of clarity. So thank you so much.
No problem at all. And that's why estate planning is so important, because, like, you know, with properties, like, you know, in the GTA area these days, like, you know, we're not looking at small numbers, even after, you know, deducting any cost of mortgages and things like that. So if there are ways that we can help people structure their assets such that, you know, the majority of their assets passes outside of the probate process, then that definitely helps. You know, that's more money in the beneficiary's pockets. It's less expenses paid by the estate, right? So it's sort of great for everybody except for the government.
So I have a follow-up question, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Thank you. Right now, do you know how long the probate process is? I heard that there is a delay and that families are actually having to wait a period before they actually can have a ruling or access to the funds or the assets. Can you speak to that a little bit?
So it sort of depends on the jurisdiction, depends on where you are at. So pre-COVID, if the deceased person lived in lived in Toronto, the Toronto Estates list was already pretty backed up. And then when COVID hit, everything shut down, and so everything's, you know, really backed up. I do know that the courts are working very hard at getting back up to speed. So it does depend on the jurisdiction of where the deceased passed away, because that's where the probate application would have to be submitted. So I don't have a quick and hard answer for you, but I mean, I would say pre-COVID, generally speaking, the executors who apply to become appointed officially, it takes them, you know, I would say, you know, on average, a couple of months, like 3 to 4 months, depending again on the jurisdiction. Right now, I just put one through in Newmarket, and that took about 5 to 6 months. But, you know, there were certain issues around that too. So it's Really hard to say, but it does take a bit of time for the executors to officially become appointed.
Thanks, Dana. Ufra, I saw you wanted to, you unmuted and wanted to ask a question. You still wanna? If you're not able to unmute yourself, please type in your message and we'll ask it for you. Okay, there was another question. I don't know if it is for Jana or whoever wants to answer. Is it important to get the will done through a lawyer, or is it okay to just write your own will without any witness and keep it away in a locker or put it away at a place in your house? Like, what is important?
So I think Shalene will probably want to chime in on this as well. So what I always tell people that I'm talking to who's interested in doing a will is that having a handwritten will or one that's done through will kits is better than having no will at all. That being said, if you are handwriting your own will or if you're using one of the will kits, make sure that you follow all of the instructions and read through all of the instructions first before you actually start writing things, because there are certain requirements and certain components that have to be included for a will to be, for a handwritten will or for one of the will kits to be valid. Some of the potential problems with will kits is the wills are not being witnessed properly. So the people that the testator is using as a witness, it can't be someone that's named as the executor or the spouse of the executor. And so some people don't really read through the instructions that well. And so, you know, just again, if you are in a circumstance where you don't have the funds to hire a lawyer, you know, no problem, but, you know, make sure that when you are doing your own will, that, you know, there's lots of information out there on Google. So, you know, make sure you also look specifically for your jurisdiction, what the requirements are, and to read through all of the instructions before you finalize it.
Thank you, Gina. Any other questions, anybody? Okay.
I was going to say, Shailene, do you have anything to add to that?
I was just gonna say, yeah, with the online will kits, just make sure that there is some fine print. You know, some of them can be $20. You know, you can get it done in 25 minutes. So it just be cautious of that. And you know, if you are like a business owner or your situation is a little bit more complicated, you definitely want to seek legal advice. I think that is the best way to do it. But yeah, just research a little bit more and keep in mind this document is basically, you know, when you pass away, they're going to take care of your entire estate. So it will take time, and maybe investing a little bit more if the cost of it, I think that'll be worthwhile as well. So lots of solutions out there, but you can obviously reach out to any of us and get that information too. So thanks.
I just have one thing to add. I'm so sorry I didn't mention this in my part of the presentation, but I meant to mention it, and I just thought of it right now. If you have a business, it's so important to make sure that you either have a separate will and separate insurance policy to pay for anything that might go wrong in your business. So I've seen this happen a lot with contractors. So if you think about it, say you have a last job to finish, and God forbid life happens and you pass away, and you don't have any insurance money. It happened in our office. There was a gentleman, 55 years old. He didn't believe in the insurance process, and he didn't believe in that product, which was fine. He did have some investments, but he got sued because of the last few jobs he didn't finish. And so any money that was going to go to his family didn't really end up going to his family, because I think they even had to sell the family home. There's a lot of stuff that happens. So please make sure your business is also a separate entity, even if it's not a separate entity, even if you're self-employed. If you're in a position where you have to cover something like even event planners, keep in mind that will planning process should take into account what you do as a living. And especially in that business realm, and obviously corporate insurances we talked a lot about during our uh, last webinar, and corporate insurances definitely do have a lot of benefits for individuals, but not to harp on insurances, but it is definitely there to tell people that this kind of stuff happens. That's why these products have come out. And funerals, passing away, death is hard in itself. And sometimes when you don't have any money left over, there's only 3 days that you get off of work, 72 hours sometimes legally that you can get off work to go over the grieving process. Like, I know 3 days the grieving process does not end. And a lot of times you end up going on leave. Sometimes you can't get on leave and you have to end up quitting your job, and you're not able to go to work. So sometimes where do you end up? You end up on my caseload sometimes. So a lot of grieving individuals used to end up on my caseload because grieving can take months and months and months and years and years and years. So just be prepared, everybody. It's so, so key to take into account so many things. And that's why you want to get in line with a professional like Jana, Shailene. You want to sit down with somebody like Andrea, who might be able to look at the situation more broadly, or a financial professional that's going to prepare you for all of that, that can see things in hindsight, that knows more examples that you do. So just for that, sorry, I forgot to add that in when I was talking. My apologies.
Oh no, that's actually wonderful. Okay, there's a last question here, and I think it is for Nehru. What if somebody has a joint mutual, a family savings, and then one person passes away? So, and if they have credit, how is it paid? Is it taken out of that savings?
So if there's joint accounts, it just goes over to the survivor of the account, especially if it's a spouse. I think Andrea would have probably answered this a lot better. But if there's any creditor issues, anything left to pay, depending on if everything's set up right and the will's set up correctly, it gets paid out of that entire process. So it gets settled either at the end, or you settle it as it goes along. So credit cards, bills, anything get settled at the end of the month. But a lot of times, depending on how you set up things, insurance takes about 30 days to pay out, or you just take money out of the account and pay it out. So it really just depends how everything's set up. There's no cookie cutter answer to that, but it comes out of whatever you have. That's how you pay everything. If that hopefully answers the question. I think, Jana, you can chime in. I think you want to say something.
Yeah, thanks, Nehru. So I just wanted to add in on that a little bit. With credit cards and things that are immediately due, and with executors sort of just freshly stepping into the situation, they may not be officially appointed, so they may not have access to the estate's bank accounts just yet, which is why the insurance piece is so important, because then that gives you a chunk of cash right away to deal with immediate expenses. And also, you know, from the beneficiaries, from the executors' requirements, they can't distribute money to beneficiaries until all of the debts of the estate have been discharged. And so that can take some time. And also, you know, like I mentioned in answering Carrie Ann's question before, for an executor to go through the official appointment process, you know, hopefully it only takes a couple of months. And in the meantime, you know, there are sometimes instances where the executor might have to go out of pocket, prepay those debts to make sure that, like, you know, nothing goes into default, you don't run into trouble with creditors, and then the executor can then reimburse themselves once they do have access to the estate accounts.
And just to add to that really quickly, that's why emergency funds are so key, because sometimes you don't have the money to do that. That's where executors end up running, you know, large credit card debts. Again, another example, an individual ended up running about a $36,000 credit card debt, and he was paying it off slowly. when somebody passed away, because the estate didn't get settled for about 3.5 years. So that debt compounded quite a bit, and it almost kind of took him down until he was reimbursed by the estate, and he got a settlement from that. So keep in mind, that's why insurances are so key, because they normally pay out within the first 30 days. So it allows you to cover those bills, just as Jana said. So important.
Okay, thank you so much, all of you. That was wonderful. Okay, so I really want to thank all of you again. This was wonderful. And like you all said, yes, this is the last in the educational series, but it is not the last time we see you, and we are going to do more and more. I just want to give out your information. Nehru, if you can put up the slides. And yes, if anybody has any other questions, please don't hesitate. Ask any of these ladies. They're very helpful, and you can call them. You can send them an email. So let me go from the beginning. Andrea Vladescu. So here we have. Thank you so much, Andrea. I know you had to leave because you have another appointment, but thank you so much for joining us for all these 4-part series. Thanks again. Now, second, we have okay, Jana. Thanks, Nehru. Okay, we have
I did it in alphabetical order.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Jana, thank you so much again. This was wonderful, bringing in your legal perspective and telling us how to handle all these things for newcomers, for in relationships, in business, and at the end, the estate planning, which we all forget and don't want to speak about. Then we have Neeru Padmanabhan. Yes, financial professional. Thanks, Neeru, for telling us how to invest, how to be better with our finances. And if anybody has any questions, go to these ladies and they'll help you out. Last but not the least, Shailene Kim. Thanks for joining us. I know it was wonderful having you and telling us that you're there when people need you in those times when they don't know where to go. So thank you so much. And all of you are doing a wonderful job. And thanks for being here with us. So everyone, thanks for joining us for all these educational series. And we will see you soon. We have on October 6th, our next webinar, which is on Kaizen. And we hope to see you all.
Yeah, and please note, if anybody missed any of the replays, they can be watched on Public Allies Inc. And I put up the link in the chat if you want to grab it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, ladies, and everybody. Have a good night. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.